Well, hello.
Hi everybody! We are back with Sunday Sessions with Courtenay Pollock. It's a beautiful day on Powell River, and I'm going to let Courtenay take it away.
Thank
Enjoy.
you, Heidi.
You're welcome.
Behind us is the Georgia Straits on the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia. It's a wonderful spot. I'm so fortunate to be here. I've been here for, 12 or 13 years now. So anyway, we have the shops going in Greenwich Village, in the West Village. We have the head shop and the pushcart on the street, and that's just still bringing in the bucks. And we opened the boutique around the corner on Bleecker Street, a few blocks down from the Fillmore East. And I think I mentioned that late at night. Well, let me just recap a little bit. The lady that walked in with the original first tie-dye I ever saw was it was just a bed sheet with a hole cut in the middle and pulled over her head, and it was concentric rings of color. Nothing elaborate, but still beautiful. And of course she wore it so elegantly that it looked like a fashion statement, but it was relatively not primitive, crude. It was what it was. It wasn't evolved, as I would say, in terms of tie-dye, but it was really the first tie-dye I recognized, and I went, well, how would I make, concentric rings? And so I went, well, I would fold it in half and half again, then you have your center, and then fold it into eighths, quarters to eighths, and then and you have this long like you're making a paper airplane. Then you can divide off sections, and those sections are your concentric rings. And within those rings you could do anything you want, whatever you got room for. So that was the principle of how I started. This lady that came in, she just was passing by the store, saw me, came in, started talking, and I was like, oh, I love your bedsheet. And she was just tall and gloriously beautiful, with long raven black hair and this amazing face and this beautiful figure. And we just started talking, and we just talked and chatted and talked, and she ended up just staying with me. And she stayed a few days. She said she did, sewing and, a certain amount of fashion stuff, and her best friend also did fashion stuff, and she was a model. Her best friend, another extraordinary, exquisitely gorgeous woman. But anyway, her friend was looking after the lady that, came in and stayed with me. Her name is Samantha. And she said, well, she has a child. He's like going on 2 years old or so. And her best friend is looking after Jason while Amanda's just kind of settling herself. And I said, well, settling herself from where? She said, well, I kind of, ran away from my partner whose child I have. We've been living together, and he said, I really don't want to be kidnapped back. So, I'm going to hide out here with you. And I said, well, that sounds like a great idea for me. And hopefully it'll work for you also. I met her girlfriend, the two beautiful, lovely ladies. Anyway, turns out Samantha's partner is Miles Davis. The legendary trumpet player, and he was a legend even back then, an extraordinary player, but he just wasn't. He was a bit of a hood. I mean, no offense, I'm probably a bit of a hood myself after everything, but he, of course. He wanted to have Amanda back, Samantha back, and Jason, of course. But they arranged a meeting And she said, well, you've got to come with me because I'm not going to be left on my own. He'll just kidnap me back. And so we arranged to meet in this public place, a coffee house, of course. And the coffee house, we approached the coffee house, and we've picked up Jason, and Jason's just riding on my hip and, hanging on. He was like a little familiar, he was just such a cute kid. Oh my God, he had this long black hair like she did, and handsome, and just a terrific kid, and of course he's got that, that charisma and spark of creativity that both Miles and Samantha had about them, and such an amazing kid. Loved that kid. He would go everywhere with me. We'd go cliff climbing and tree climbing and just hang on like a monkey. It was so beautiful. Anyway, we went in, we approached this coffee house, and there's these two big henchmen on either side of the doorway of the coffee house, and I was like, bodyguards or what, and he'd had the whole coffee house emptied out, and excuse me, we go inside, we go past these guys, and they're just like, look at us, we go by, will I ever leave this place, on my own 2 feet? And we go in, there's Miles sitting at the table, won't look at me, doesn't look at me, he's obviously, how could this skinny white dude, steal my woman? And, well, I don't know, I'm making a little commentary for him, but he was probably just thinking, well, I should just snuff him. Anyway, I don't know, I'm making fun, but so we sat down, and he has to have a meeting about, child support and this kind of stuff, and I said, I'll take care of everything. I didn't say that in front of him, but I had said it to her, and she said, no, he needs the responsibility, and he probably wants the responsibility, otherwise he's really not going to be engaged in the relationship with his son. And I said, yeah, I respect that. So anyway, and during the whole meeting, and Jason's clambering all over me, and he and Samantha are having the tete-a-tete, and I'm the only other one at the table with Jason. And of course, I can feel Miles fuming because his kid is like all over me. He's just like.
You're very lovable, so I
nah.
can see that.
Well, that's so sweet of you to say. But anyway, so that was my, and we had a number of meetings, around this, maybe 3 or 4, and every time it was the same thing. He would deign to not notice me, even though it was like I was like the elephant in the room. And so anyway, that was my meeting with Miles Davis. Not the most positive, but it was an extraordinary story anyway. So anyway, we decided that I was going to do fashions of my own, and I really wasn't going to sit down with a pad and design stuff. I was just going to get fabric and yardage of gorgeous fabric, and then just drape it around Samantha and her friend, and so I set up this little elevated stage in the back of the store, and we had it all set with music in there, and the lighting just right, and the stage set. And the girls they were naked under their robes so that I could just dress them. And around the time the Fillmore East was letting out with all of the concert goers, streaming by the store, in no time the place was packed. I mean, as many people as could get in there, they were in there. And I had this young Puerto Rican fellow who styled himself as a tailor, and he was there with his measurements and his machine, and and all he really had. My idea was to just like wind and drape and fabrics and pin here and tuck there and just, you know, make them look, you know, gorgeous on these lovely ladies. And he would just, whoever was like, I'm interested in that design there, and he would measure the lady up, you know, and he'd figure it out, you know, how to, where the nips and tucks go, and, you know, all live kind of performance. I go just from one idea to another with different fabrics, and, you know, of course, people there for the girly show, and but anyway, one of the things that turned out, Samantha, I said, well, what do you do? You know, you model? She said, well, not exactly. She said, I'm an exotic dancer. And I said, well, how exotic are you? You know, what the hell? You know, she said, well, I'm a fire eater. I said, oh, well, that's pretty hot. That was terrible. So tell me about it. She said, well, you know, I blow fire. And typically, she does it in front of a white sheet, and she's behind the sheet, and she's backlit, so it's all silhouette. And so you see the form of her body, but you don't see anything explicit, while she dances and does this stuff, and then does the fire blowing, and you can see the fire, you know, coming out of her mouth. It's dancing on her skin and stuff like that. That was so she was really an exotic dancer. And back then, exotic dancers, there weren't any, you know, topless bars or anything like that. It was all burlesque. Burlesque was the scene, you know, and they were, you know, and even in burlesque, they wore the pasties and little G-strings. So there's nothing explicit, really. You know, but it was risque for back then. I think it started maybe in the 50s, anyway, and now we're into the late 60s. And these the top billers for the burlesque scene, they were, I remember Tempest Storm. She was the top biller, and maybe, you know, Scarlet Bush. Maybe I made that one up, but it was there was, you know, wonderful names. And so anyway, and then Samantha, I don't remember she had anything but Samantha, and she basically kicked all of these burlesque top billers, you know, that have been around for, you know, a decade or so. They were not young anymore. They were still gorgeous, amazing, you know, women, and you know, fantastic performers and everything. But Samantha came along with her fire-eating act and her, you know, gorgeous, lithe, tall, young, exotic looks, and just, you know, took burlesque scene by storm. And I remember we went on a tour of the burlesque circuit at one time, and I would of course be backstage. We'd have a nearby hotel, and have a friend of hers in to look after her son Jason while we went to the theaters, and we'd, you know. So I'm backstage, and of course there's all these girls running around naked, and because I'm with the top biller, you know, the headliner, of course they all want to kind of know, you know, get a piece of me. What's going on there? Anyway, so the moment she'd go on for her act, you know, after a little lead up and a few other acts and stuff, she went on stage, and I stayed backstage. Well, they'd like get swarmed by all these girls, and this was the early days of breast enhancement, and, you know, these courageous young girls who thought bigger is better, or whatever they thought. You know, most women, you know, all their proportions are appropriate to their size and body style and everything, you know, and they're just perfect, you know. Why change it, you know? And so there were these terrible butcher jobs, some of them, and others weren't subtle, you know. But anyway, one by one they would come up and want me to assess their new assets. And, you know, what is it? Does it look up? I said, oh, it looks lovely, darling, really. I was like, oh, God. And I said, well, how does it feel? And I said, oh, it feels normal. I said, what's these lumps here and stuff? And it's like, I was like, it's kind of tragic, you know, but, you know, spending, you know, time backstage assessing people's breasts, I mean, tough job, somebody's got to do it. I was like, better me than some, well, maybe, you know, at least I was a gentleman about it. Anyway, that was a little aside. Samantha came back on backstage, and everybody, you know, disappeared into the corners, and then anyway, that was a little aside, you know, part of the. So we went back to the village after the tour. The tour was amazing. We saw some interesting areas. We went to Georgetown in the capital of Washington, D.C., and where a lot of jazz and early things started. And Philadelphia and the Liberty Bell and all of those little bits of history that I, you know, wasn't really familiar with at that time. And and these different burlesque theaters, and it was quite the experience. It was the last days of the burlesque, and right after that, the topless bars, you know, came into style, and you know, true striptease, not just burlesque things, but actual naked. So anyway. So we went back to my shop, and that's when we decided we'd set up the stage and do the draping and sell fashions off the floor, which was successful. We did those, you know, very well, and at some point, of course, we started exploring places to go to, you know, move to and live, but I was doing the stores, and I really didn't have another source of income. And moving to somewhere like Atlantic City, you know, where there would be work for Samantha, but for me, you know, it's not like I'm her manager or anything. I'm not really adding to the thing, except for being her protector, you know, such as that is, you know. But I was young and strong, and, you know, but certainly wouldn't have been any match for any, you know, 300-pound gunsman. But anyway, so that was
a good way to send this off.
Okay.
All right.
I think that was about the right period of time, right?
I think so. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the view and Courtney's story. Have a good one. Bye now.